Hello and welcome to the Fayette County Republican Party YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us for our Campaign 2020 virtual series where we're interviewing those candidates that are facing primary challengers in the very important June 9th primary. There are many candidates on that ballot that don't have challengers, so we're not interviewing them right now. We're focusing for you, the voter, on those seats that have contested races. These are on our Fayette County Board of Commissioners as well as our Board of Education. So these are offices that have really big impact on how we live and the quality of our life. So we think it's very important that you are an informed voter on that June 9th election day, whether you're voting by absentee ballot, early voting, or going to your polls on June 9th. Do go and vote. But we also ask that you take these videos and share them with your friends and your family and your co-workers. We want every voter to be an informed voter. This is a very important time. This week we're interviewing the 5 candidates that qualified for the 2 seats on the Fayette County Board of Education. There is 1 seat that is available, but there's no primary challenger. So we are just focusing on those contests where there are challengers. We do ask that you also visit our website at My Fayette GOP to learn more about the candidates and what the Republican Party does here in the county. And I have with me right now candidate Neil Sullivan, who is running in
Post 3
for the Fayette County, and that means only folks that live in that district will be able to cast their vote.
Correct.
For you. So it's real important. Neil, we've got some questions that have been submitted to us, and we're going to try to do as many questions as we can. But before we do that, we're going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your campaign.
Well, first, thank you for doing this, and thank you to the volunteers. I mean, this is a good thing, and the Fayette County Republican Party does a good job of informing the voters. Now, I am a certified public accountant. I am currently a director site controller for DHL Supply Chain in Union City. We have a budget almost approximately the size of the school board, so I deal in big numbers. And I've also been a 3 times East Blast chairman. So doing that, we've secured over $250 million in funding for our schools to build buildings, books, and buses, and of course we're going to talk about Booth. But more importantly, I've been involved as a PTO parent, as a Little League coach, and more importantly, as a homework dad. You know, I get to do homework every night with my son. My wife is a Fayette County teacher. She teaches history at Sandy Creek and AP psychology. So I'm pretty close to the teachers and worked with a lot of them getting ideas for this campaign. So it's important to listen to our front line. Now, I've been advised not to be too much of an accountant. Now, that's going to be pretty hard for me. But the important thing to know about accountants is we take care of the money. We look at processes and try to improve them. And most importantly, we hold people accountable for the way they spend the money and the way they do their job. So when we look at the, taking care of the money, being the East Blast, back in 2008 when we started, our schools were in tough shape. We were leasing computers.
We were in a down economy then.
We were down in economy, and the state of Georgia was taking money called austerity cuts. So we weren't even getting our full earned funding. So it was a bad situation. The voters passed East Blast 1, and that helped us buy the Classroom of Tomorrow technology. So that's the base on which we do our technology today when our kids are learning from school home. We're learning at home school. But anyway, then, but more importantly, it has helped put roofs on buildings and keep our buildings in good shape, because that's very important. Has bought textbooks to keep them up and current. And the last one helped with the technology for the Chromebooks, which our students are using today. But on the other side of that is managing the costs. Now, the important thing there is, for the most part, our schools have been at near state average cost per pupil. So our system's done a decent job, but there's still things we can do better. And because that's the important thing. Budgeting shouldn't be how much money do we have, let's go spend it. We should be talking about what is the cost of school, and then take that much money and then return the rest to the taxpayers. Now, the second thing is processes. Like I said, it's important to talk to the teachers. And there's a lot of good ideas that come from the central office, and it's almost like a hand grenade. A pin is pulled and is thrown there, go figure this out, this is what we want to do. And I think what we need to do is make sure we have the right feedback to make sure our teachers are heard and our administrators. Because we have, super creative people that do a great job. And more importantly, our test scores are super. We have very high-performing students. It's the fact that the UGA actually limits the number of students that they take from Fayette County every year, because we can fill the place. But as much as we're very proud of our high performers, we need to make sure that otherwise gifted students across the system have a chance to shine in their right, and they have paths for their futures. Now, we'll talk more about that because my son Jackson went to Peachtree City Elementary, kindergarten and 5th grade. In 1st grade, Miss Betty Strickland identified that he had some issues, and it turned out that he has a processing disorder. It's all up there, but finding the right words, and sometimes it gets jumbled up. Now, he was in special ed from grade 2 to 5 in Peachtree City, but we made the decision to move Jackson to Trinity Christian with smaller class sizes and, more importantly, a different way to do special ed. There they met with the parapro before school, and then the para would float during classes and then meet with them after school to get them started their homework. And each year their level of responsibility went up. Now I'm proud to report Jackson has gotten good grades in a smaller environment, small class sizes. Now fortunately our Fayette County schools do have lower than state average. And more importantly, I believe in that. That's an important thing. But even though Jackson isn't in the schools, I still have a deep passion for that. I was the chairman of the East Blast while he was at Trinity. But where I knew it was a good decision, in 6th grade, it was around November, he looked at me, I picked him up after school one day, and said, "Dad, I can do this. I'm not stupid." And it was heartbreaking. But he got the confidence that he can do the schoolwork. But in the other environment, he didn't feel he could succeed. So one size doesn't fit all, but it fits most. Our schools do a good job. But for Jackson, it was a better fit somewhere else. Mm-hmm. In terms of holding people accountable, we have to do that too. It's not just go along to get along. When things happen like the health textbook adoption, when the 200 residents showed up at the school board meeting and Dr. Marchman started getting to the bottom of how this all happened, there was a lot of circular finger pointing. A lot of, well, they did this, not, guys, when we do this stuff, we're going before the county to ask for things. Who's in charge and how's the job you're doing? Too long, we just either throw up our hands or we don't get to the bottom of things. Now with that, I've talked to more than a dozen people on all sides of this issue to find out from their perspective, how did this happen?
And when you say how did this happen, you're talking about the textbook adoption committee?
Well, how did we get to a spot where it was an angry mob, for lack of a better word? Mm-hmm. And that was the first time we really had a discussion about it.
Right.
And what I was unfortunate, because I talked to one school board member, and he's like, well, technically it's just a textbook adoption. And I'll tell you, as a father, when my son says technically, I've got him. And something's wrong. Mm-hmm. But then it went further. He started telling me that he thought the people opposing it were being put there by the publisher of the current book, one that's done so well for our students. And it's like, well, if they're going to digitize next year, why not wait? Why not look at all of our options, make the best one? And I couldn't get a good answer. Mm-hmm. So, that's, again, holding people accountable, getting the facts, because,
Does that go to transparency for the parents?
Very transparency, and that's, thank you. I was supposed to lead with that. But that's why I talked about my son, because I want to be transparent. I don't want people to say, well, you didn't tell us. Mm-hmm. Because I've had over 30 letters printed in the Citizen. I've been very transparent, make sure the voters have the facts. The 3 East Blocks, the state funding, different state initiatives. I've always made sure to go find the facts and present them, and Mr. Beverly's been very, very kind to give us space to do that.
Well, let's talk about the East Blast and
Sure.
Booth Middle School, because you were the chairman of getting the East Blast
Yes.
passed. You've been very vocal about the decision to change the project list from just a $10 million renovation to now building a brand new school on a newly acquired property. You share with us your thoughts and concerns about that?
Well, what some people don't know is the 3 East Blocks weren't the only 3. There were 2 before that failed, where the public did not feel they were being dealt with transparently with the facts. So when we got this, we committed to talking only in facts and presenting all available information. And that meant being transparent and trust the list. When Dr. Dakotas was the superintendent in East Blast 1, he committed to have a citizens committee where we met at the Board of Education, not just me and the people who volunteered for it, but people had no idea who they were. The room was full. And every project they were going to spend money on was presented, and we voted. It was extremely transparent. Dr. Kotis retired and Dr. Bearden came in, and Dr. Bearden wasn't here long enough to really get going on that, but he had committed to doing it. And then we got the interim superintendent and now Dr. Barrow. And Dr. Barrow seems to have a smaller set of advisors. And again, there's a story with that. Whereas with Booth, Booth has been the same complaint since 2008, since the first East Blast. If we wanted to build a new school building, we should have disclosed it and put it in any of the 3 splosts. Now, as chairman, I will tell you, let's go build a new middle school. It's a much tougher campaign. But there are good facts we can talk about. I'm not necessarily arguing with the fact we needed to build a new middle school eventually. I'm arguing with the fact that the voters were not told that before they voted.
Now, let's say you were serving on the school board right this minute.
Right.
And you are facing now, under the COVID lockdown of businesses, the sales tax revenue is dropping.
Right.
We may not have that same upward path of sales tax revenue that we've been enjoying for the last few years. What would your concerns be about having this construction project of a school?
Right.
And possibly the sales tax revenue dropping? I mean, does that need to be a concern right now?
Well, it does. I worked for Delta in finance during the bankruptcy. And that was our first thought when we saw the trajectory and it was going to hit bankruptcy. That was our first thing. What money can we hold on to? What projects can we delay or cancel? Because again, we've bought the land. That's done.
Right.
So even if we left the land there for 5 more years to build the money for the school, we could do that. Now, granted, we would have to go forward with 5 more years of bad Booth, but we'd have the money to do it.
Right.
And we wouldn't be taking money from other projects because, there's only so much. And, we have roofs that, preventative maintenance. Every 10 years we replace the roofs. We replace the floors for cleanliness. And which projects are going to get delayed or canceled to go full steam ahead with Booth? That would be the conversation, because we should have, what are our projects? This has to be done. This is nice, and we can get to this. And to be honest, Booth isn't in the we have to do this right now.
Okay, so let's talk about one more question about finance, and then we'll move on to non-finance things,
I like
as you were
finance
advised.
questions.
I know you do. Let's talk about millage rates.
Okay.
Okay. So the school board has been very close to the maximum millage rate for many, many years. We're at the 20.0 millage rate. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've dropped down to 19.250.
Right.
That's all. With the increase in property values, that is increasing the revenue. So the school board has rolled back the millage rates a little bit, but the revenue was still just flowing in big time. And they tend to seem to be basing their budgets on how much money they're going to get in, rather than the needs of the school and the students and the teachers. I mean, what are your thoughts on millage rates and budgets and income?
Well, I kind of referenced that a little bit in the beginning, is that a budget in the business world isn't built on how much money we're going to pull in. It's built on here's what we currently have, move the teachers up the pay scale for those who do raises, and these are the contracts that for vendors, this is how much money we need. And then if there is a new program, like we're starting a new pathway or doing something International Baccalaureate, that is a separate item that we decide, do we do this or we don't do it. Then we know how much money we need. Then we go to the property digest. We look at, based on the current millage rate, how much revenue would that be? If it's too much, lower the millage rate. This is how much we need. Now, just Friday, the state of Georgia has said that they are planning on cutting all budgets 14%, including education.
Yep.
That could affect our schools $15 million.
15
million.
for the coming school year.
For the coming school year.
Wow.
So now we have a surplus, we have reserves, the state has reserves. So I'm hoping it's not 15 million. So don't play that back at home, kids. But the truth is it's going to be more than $1, and it's going to hurt. So again, we budget to what we need to do versus having all these things where, hey, we have more money, we can do this, because now we get to a situation where we cut. Do we furlough teachers? Do we cut K-1 parapros? Because that's what we did last time. And to me, that having a son with special needs, that's near and dear to my heart, making sure we have enough resources in the bottom. But we also need to have resources through the schools. We need to make sure we're providing things. But last time we went through this, the school board furloughed the teachers for 5 days. So they got 5 days less pay, but they got 0 less work. So we basically took 5 days of free school on the backs of our employees. And I would hope if we plan properly, we wouldn't have to do that this time.
Speaking of millage rates, Representative Josh Bonner has a bill in the General Assembly, House Bill 1166.
Right.
And the goal of that bill is to cap Fayette's property tax assessments at 3%.
Right.
And this is for school taxes only. Okay. So that will cut the big sums of revenue coming in. If the school board wants to raise more money, they're going to have to raise that millage rate. Can you support that legislation?
I would have to talk to Representative Bonner because I have some concerns. The first is there's a capping going up, but there's no capping going down. So look at the Great Recession. The tax side just grew down 10%.
Yeah.
But it can only go up 3. It would take 4 years to get back.
Right.
So I really want to talk about how do we cap both sides of it.
Maybe we need another provision in that legislation because we are concerned, I think, that we may be seeing some property value decreases in Fayette County because we're a big Delta employer. Pinewood Movie Studios, all are going to be affected by this COVID lockdown.
Right, and I've read the legislation. I mean, it's a good start. But I would just like to make sure there's some safeguards because Fayette County, unlike other counties, over 15% of our digest is off the books because it has a senior exemption, either a partial or a full. So again, just to make sure that all the math worked before we commit ourselves to something.
Now, the East Plus, was the East Plus responsible for acquiring the Chromebooks for all of our students?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, as a parent and as a husband of a teacher,
right.
A few years ago, Dr. Barra made the statement that the goal of digitizing curriculum was to ultimately remove that sage from the stage.
Right.
Meaning
the
teacher doesn't teach anymore. The kids learn it all from their computer.
Right.
As a parent and a husband of a teacher, how do you feel about that?
I completely disagree with him. Now, and I can tell you from my experience watching this in the past month, now, there was one day I was on a conference call in my office. My son was upstairs on Zoom with his teacher, and my wife was on Google Meet with her class down in the living room. And her students are showing up every day for school, even though they don't have to, because they have questions. And while they can figure out a lot of things, I was amazed, my first Zoom town hall, my son showed me how to make a virtual background on my phone. I mean, so they can learn a lot of things, but the teacher's a guide, and the teacher's an explainer, and I'd never think you can take the human factor out of education, and get a good product, and more importantly, a local voice.
And the morals and the values that come from a human being teaching and understanding whether something is correct or not.
Right.
How is a child going to discern if there's not an adult there?
That's right, and it's also to help, you're right, I mean, hold accountable, because I've been very interested to watch my wife and my son's teachers, how they're giving tests. I mean, in one class, they're taking the test on Zoom so the teacher can see them. With her, they're getting slots where a certain number of students are online and they're getting a version of the test. The next group are getting a different version. So again, it's holding them accountable, make sure they're learning it, not just trying to cheat their way through, or not just trying to paddle their way through.
And one last question.
Sure.
According to towncharts.com, approximately 15% of tax-paying families in Fayette are sending their children to private schools or they are homeschooling.
Right.
Should these families be afforded the ability for their children to use school resources, participate in clubs, participate in sports, or the band program, use a science lab, or have access to other publicly funded athletic fields, gyms, and auditoriums?
I would think that we should find a way to do at least some of that. Where, at our school at Trinity, we have a hybrid program where kids come to school half a day and the rest of their day is homeschool. So there are models out there to do exactly this, and we should look at that and find out how do we use the alternative school resources, where it's a big building, it's a former high school, do we provide those resources so if you don't want to necessarily have a student you don't know, for lack of a better word, coming into McIntosh, here's a building in Fayetteville that has all the laboratories we need, all the technical abilities to do animation and all that. Is there a way to build a homeschool or otherwise school sports program, to compete in the GHSA? Or is there a way to provide options in the schools? But that, it's a delicate situation. Let's be honest, because the parent of my son's a pitcher on the baseball team, and he's a travel baseball player, so I can tell you parents in sports get a little crazy. But I think the question has to be, how do we, not should we?
Right.
And then let's find a solution. Because there has to be one. Reasonable people can find reasonable ways.
After all, the goal in our community, isn't it, to educate everybody?
They're community schools.
That's right. Whether they're homeschooling, private school, or as a society, is to raise up our children to be educated and be good citizens, right?
Yep.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for your time today. And we just have another minute if you want to share with those that are watching today on how they can learn more about you. And because we weren't able to ask many of the questions that were submitted. So how can they learn more about you?
Well, to learn more about me, first there's Neil Sullivan for Post 3 at Fayette County Board of Education on Facebook. And then my son Jackson and I just finished the Sullivan4fcboe.com website that's publishing tonight when we get home, and that's going to be a really cool thing, and it was great to do it with Jackson, so that was fun.
That is nice.
And then my phone is 404-285-5954. If you're interested in a Zoom meeting or Zoom town hall, text me and we'll get you on the next one.
Very good, Neil. Thank you
Great.
so much for being with us, and good luck. Good luck.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you for joining us again. And remember to visit our website at myfayettegop.org to learn more about the candidates running. Links to these videos will be there, and share all of this information with everybody that you know. Let's have an informed electorate on June the 9th for primary day. Thank you once again.